Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it, man. NFC North record predictions. As always, I'll kick us off.
At the bottom of this division, I got the Chicago Bears finishing with a record of 6-11. I do believe that they went out and decided that they're going to build around Justin Fields and offer him the weapons and the personnel that he needs to succeed. You know, they brought in Darnell White, who they drafted. They traded for DJ Moore. They have Darnell Mooney. They looked to upgrade their offensive line, and they decided that we're going to go all in with Justin Fields. They had the opportunity to perhaps, they could have drafted someone like Bryce Young, maybe traded Justin Fields, but they decided Justin Fields is their quarterback for the future, and I do expect him to take a leap this upcoming season, but I'm not fully sold on his passing capabilities. I do think that there is potential there. I do think he has a very good deep ball ability to throw the ball deep, but other than that, his reads and his accuracy does need some work, and so I'm not fully sold on that. And on top of that, their defense was one of the worst, if not the worst, last season, and I don't expect it to take a monumental jump. I think there is some personnel here and there, but especially ever since they lost Roquan Smith, they signed Tremaine Edmonds, but Roquan Smith was an All-Pro level player, and I don't expect them to be able to replace someone like that. So I got the Chicago Bears finishing 6-11. After that, I got the Detroit Lions going 8-9. This team, we've been, it's been talked about a lot these last two seasons, and last season they did have a pretty successful season by their own standards. I think Jared Goff, he gave them exactly what they needed. We spoke about him as a bridge quarterback, but I think these guys kind of view him as their quarterback for the next 2-3 years. But overall, when I look at this team, their offense is something that could be glaring, something that could be potentially explosive. But on top of that, Jared Goff, I still don't have full belief in him. When you look at the advanced stats, some of the throws that he was making, I mean, this guy never threw past 7 yards per play. I think he was bottom 10 in average depth for his passing. He was a lot of short yardage. They didn't fully trust him. Felt like, they're kind of babying Jared Goff. And, to be honest, if you're looking to improve on your ceiling, you gotta be able to air out the ball. And, this team defensively, it's been a struggle, and they reach heavily on their 2 first-round picks. And I'll forever stick to that. Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be a really solid player, but for what this team needed and what they were attempting to do, I think Jahmyr Gibbs was a complete reach, and the other pick that they had. And so when I look at this team, the offense could be potentially explosive, but I don't believe in that with Jared Goff. I think, they're going to look to hit Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs and run with Dave Montgomery. They have a solid offensive line, but overall, when I look at this team, I don't believe in Jared Goff's ability to raise their ceiling. So I got them finishing 8-9. Up next, I got the Vikings here. I got them finishing 9-8. And the reason why is I believe regression is kicking in for the Vikings coming into this season. When you look at last season and what they were putting out, I mean, their defense was bottom 3 in the league in terms of yards that they were giving up in points. A lot of games that they needed to just throw the ball to be able to keep up. And I don't believe this team, when you look at their personnel, has improved heavily. I know a lot of people are going to be raving about Brian Flores, but, a defensive coordinator is not going to be able to save bad personnel. I don't believe in the secondary whatsoever. I don't believe in the pass rush as much, especially since they lost to Zadarius Smith. I know he wasn't that good the second half of the season, but you only have Daniil Hunter, and he's not. And we're not going to put him up there with the elite of the elite, the best of the best edge rushers. And so, when you're just blitzing and you don't have the best pass rush, I don't believe in the secondary at all. I think a team like this can get absolutely torched. And so, Vikings, I just don't see it defensively. Offensively, I do think that they have diversified their offense. When they have Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, K.J. Osborne, of course, Justin Jefferson. But overall, when I look at that, I just feel like defensively there's still a lot left to be said. And a lot of games last season, they're getting bailed out. A lot of games that were extremely close that could have went the other way. And so I think this is a team that regression is going to be kicking in for them. Upcoming number 1, I call it bias, call it me being a Packers fan, but I got the Packers finishing here at 10-7.
You lost Aaron Rodgers, and you still think you guys are gonna win the division.
Yeah.
I think
we gotta let him land, man.
I think what Jordan Love is gonna be able to put out this year potentially might be better than what Aaron Rodgers was putting out last season. I think Aaron Rodgers, when you look at him, he wasn't great at all whatsoever. I don't think he was even particularly good. I don't think he played at a top 12, top 13 level quarterback play. If you had told me that coming into last season, I wouldn't have believed you, but it was the truth. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was missing throws that he was making in his sleep, and so Jordan Love, I feel like he's bought into the Matt LaFleur system. And, a lot of people can talk about Matt LaFleur, but there's one thing that they can't talk about is how good our offense has been under Matt LaFleur ever since he's come in 2019. We've had one of the best offenses in the league, and so Jordan Love isn't necessarily Aaron Rodgers, but from what I've seen in preseason and how they've been raving about him, I believe this kid has potential. This kid can definitely do some damage, and they're gonna they brought in they drafted a wide receiver in Jaden Reed. Christian Watson is expected to take a leap, and of course you have Romeo Doubs. And so I love Aaron Jones, and so this unit, if it's able to stay healthy, especially on the offensive line, you have Elton Jenkins, you have David Bakhtiari, you have Myers, it's a solid overall offensive line. I think that Jordan Love can do damage with this team, but defensively is where I get a bit excited. Joe Barry, the first half of last season, absolutely disappointed with this unit. But in the second half of the season, we really started to figure things out. I think our secondary was playing lights out, and I only expect us to improve from there. We drafted Luke Van Ness, who I believe is going to be a monster of an edge rusher. We have Rashawn Gary, who will be coming back probably by midseason, and that's going to be a boost to us. But our secondary with Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas and Jair Alexander, I'm excited about the number of first-round picks that we have on this defense, especially with Quay Walker. I think he's absolutely phenomenal in pass coverage and run coverage. I think he will expect it to be improved. So, this is a unit that I think is young. But when I look at this NFC North, top to bottom, it's not necessarily the most talented of the talented from years past. But I think that I can settle down on the Packers finishing 10-7. So,
hey, you're very hyped on your Packers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I believe
It's
it's
hype, bro. It's not even hype, man.
I believe in Jordan Love, man.
I think all three of us probably do agree that the Bears probably finished last. I got them 6-11, 7-10. Feel like they're going to be a much better team with the transactions they made this offseason. Picking up DJ Moore, picking up other positions that they needed, fixing the own line, and he just getting Justin Fields the weapons that he needs. So I feel like they upgraded on the offensive side of the ball. They still need some more more room to mesh with the chemistry and everything. And defensively, they had an okay defensive team, but you lose Roquan Smith, that's a big loss. He's one of the best players on the defensive side of the ball, and yeah, you lose him. So I do want to see where they fill out that hole on the defensive side of the ball and see who else steps up for them and makes an impact. But I got them much better than they were last year. I feel like Fields will take this next step. People say that he didn't have that number one receiver, and now he got DJ Moore. So you got DJ Moore, you got your number one receiver, you got to, retool the line, So let's see what he does. And I do expect him. I do want to see him air out the ball much, much more than he runs the ball. So we'll see what happens. But I got them sitting here 6-11 or 7-10. But third, Green Bay Packers. I got them right here 8-9. I just feel like, Jordan Love's going to come in. I do feel like he's going to have towards a good season, but I just don't think that he can replicate and implicate the stuff that Aaron Rodgers was doing with this Packers team the last 15 to 17 years. It's going to take some time for him to get into rhythm and, get used to this stuff. But I don't think he has the offensive weapons that, they had in the past, not including last year, but for him to set him up. Christian Watson's a phenomenal receiver, but after that, it's guys like, Romeo Doubs, and I can't even name the other third receiver that you guys have. And, you guys did draft the tight end and Luke Musgrave, and we'll see what he, how he fits into the team and everything. But I just think the offensive weapons for you guys is not enough to push you guys into a position to make the playoffs. But on the defensive side of the ball, you guys got a phenomenal defense, especially on that back end of the ball with the DBs and the corners and the safeties. Those guys, they're tough, they're fantastic. But, last year I feel like 10 to 12 games early in the season, you guys were getting gashed, run ball. People were just running on y'all. And I feel like, you guys kind of fixed that up towards the second half of the season. But, they're going to come out, test the Packers on the run game again and, see what they can do. And eventually we got, Jordan Love's going to he's going to have to be tested. And that's what's going to happen next year. So we'll see. But I got them here 8-9. I don't think they're going to be better than the Vikings. And I don't think they're going to be better than the Detroit Lions. My second seed in this division, second spot is going to be I don't know. I think that I'm gonna go with Detroit. I'm gonna go with Detroit second here. I think they end up 10-7. I feel like Abdi said, he thinks that they reached for Jamar Gibbs and Jack Campbell. I feel like they drafted Jamar Gibbs at the perfect spot. They didn't care about where they were going to get him regardless they had their pick. Even if it was back in the back end of the second round or the back end of the first round, they already said they're going to take Jamar Gibbs for it. So for them to take him that early, it doesn't surprise me. They had their eyes on him already. Might as well, draft up, trade back down, get some extra picks, and then just pick him at 12. And that's what they did. And Jack Campbell, I mean, they talked about him in preseason and saying that he's going to become their starting linebacker. He stepped up and he's shown some stuff that, that's why they drafted him at 17. And I feel like they have a plan with those two guys. There's a reason they took him, out of their ADP and their usual draft position and, took him that early. Feel like it's going to fit into the scheme that they're playing and they're working. And offensively this year, you said Jared Goff last year, he didn't really deep throw the ball like that much. He wasn't throwing the ball. I mean, after the second half of the season, you lose Hawkinson, your only target St. Brown, and Williams still hasn't came back. And, Swift is in and out of injury. Defense is going to, they're going to adjust and switch. I feel like the first 6 weeks for them, they're throwing the ball out, lights out. People had to adjust in it. But after losing Hawkinson and a couple injuries to the team, it was tough for him to throw the ball. But I feel like he's a phenomenal quarterback with the additions of, picking up Gibbs. Williams is going to be back in 5 games, having St. Brown, drafting Sam Laporta. That's the tight end's last name if I'm butchering it. And, that 1-2, I feel like they have a more original 1-2-1 run game with Montgomery and that Gibbs as a 3-down back. So I feel like it's going to be a little better for them this year. Defensively, I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I feel like, Aiden Hutchinson, he's going to take that next step, and everybody else around him should take that next step. But we'll see what happens. But I do, they're a Seattle loss away from making the playoffs last year. So for them, it's the only way up. I don't see Jared Goff as a bad quarterback. I feel like now, once the team's completely healthy, he's going to have a set of targets and he's going to have some fun. So got them second. And Minnesota Vikings. Got them number 1 here, but I got them sitting at 11-6, maybe 10-7. I just feel like they're going to drop off from last year. I don't know if it's going to be the same. Last year, I can't even name the amount of games that it was just 1 point, 2 point scores, 3 point scores, or it come down to the last wire and they'll get the winner. I just feel like, you can't have that luck back-to-back years. And they're still a phenomenal, great team. Offensively, they're a juggernaut, one of the best offensive teams in the league. And, they picked up Hawkinson, a young tight end. They just, signed him to extension. They got JJ, one of the best receivers in the league. You pick up Addison to replace Thielen, and, Madison steps up and takes that Cook spot. Offensively, they're, still phenomenal. It's going to be a shootout for them. But my question stands with the defense. And that defense, it's bend or break. At moments they'll hold, and then at moments they won't. And that one of those moments came against the Giants in the playoffs where they broke and they couldn't stop Daniel Jones and Barkley and a couple guys off the training team roster, that was even on the NFL roster beforehand, cook them. So, they drafted some DBs. I'm pretty sure, hey, one of your DBs came back this year. If I'm correct, that was hurt last year. Was it a rookie that was hurt last year?
Lewis Seen get injured last year. We had Andrew Booth Jr. too.
Okay, so you got some young talent cornerbacks coming back. So who knows, man? Maybe the defense for me is what holds the Vikings to making that next step in the playoffs. They have one of the best offenses in the league, and if their defense can show up at more times and be better and close out games when needed to be, they're in a good spot. But so this is a tough division. It's going to be fun to be watching these guys play.
See, man, that's a prediction I can get behind, man, because I can't fault you for having either us or the Lions finishing number 1 in this division, because I think that's what it's looking like for this year. So for me, number 4 though, I do unfortunately not have the Bears at the spot. I have the Green Bay Packers finishing at the number 4 spot with a record of, I believe I have these guys going, I want to say 6-11. There we go. There's just going to be a lot of growing pains for this Green Bay Packers team. They're moving off from a guy that's been in their locker room, their starting quarterback for the last 10 to 12 years in Aaron Rodgers, to a guy that's been sitting behind them. I know Packers fans have had the greatest luck in the world transitioning from quarterback to quarterback, from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. I just think the train stops there. I don't think the transition from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love is going to be as smooth as Packers fans would hope. And so, last year when Aaron Rodgers went down in that Eagles game, and we saw a couple of glimpses from Jordan Love, I came on here and vouched for the Packers to move in a different direction and play Jordan Love just to see how he's going to look, just to get an idea of what Jordan Love could look like in this offense as a starting quarterback. But of course, Aaron Rodgers, he didn't want to go out. He didn't want to sit out a game or two, and he ended up leading the team to, a potential playoff run, but just came up a little bit short in that last game. And so, unfortunately, we still have no film on Jordan Love. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's going to be a bad thing because, it's going to be a lot of growing pains. Matt LaFleur is not dealing with a guy like Aaron Rodgers anymore, a guy that knew the system perfect inside and out. And so Jordan Love's just going to have to learn on the fly. And I don't think that's going to lead to a lot of wins for this team. But the defense, I got to tip their hat off to them, those guys. Those guys do have a great defense. But I'm only giving them 6 wins here. And I think I'm being a little bit generous. Somewhere between 5 or 6, 7 at the most. Nothing too crazy, though. Number 3, I have the Chicago Bears finishing here with a record of 7-10. I think the Chicago Bears did a tremendous job in this past offseason, through the free agency market, attacking the guys that they needed to go get. They got gifted the number 1 overall pick because of the Houston Texans during that last week of the season. They flipped that. They got Justin Fields, a number 1 wide receiver. And I think a lot of people underrate Justin Fields' passing ability because he's just not good of a passer. That's what they think. But I think Justin Fields is a great passer. And I think now that he has a lot of weapons now and a wide receiver one that he can consistently trust each and every down, we're going to see a lot of flashes and a lot of improvement from Justin Fields in that aspect of the game. Their defense is still going to struggle a little bit. Of course, they did make some signings and stuff like that, but they do have a little bit of more money to spend in this upcoming offseason as well. And so these guys are 1 to 2 years away from competing for the NFC North title. And I'm actually a little bit scared and worried because if these guys, end up drafting well and continue to sign a lot of key guys in the free agency market, those guys might just clear the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions and just be the kings of the North for the foreseeable future. But unfortunately, this year, they'll be a 7-win team. They'll be a very solid team. They'll have something to improve on. They'll have something to grow on going into the next season. And Justin Fields will take that leap as a quarterback for sure. Number 2 and number 1 is a toss-up for me. But bias aside, I'm still going to go ahead and say number 2 is going to be the Detroit Lions here with a record of 9-8. I do think that this team has the potential to win the division. I think the winner of this division will have no more than 10 wins. I can't see any team in this division winning this division with more than 10 wins. The Detroit Lions last year, we saw how great they were. We saw how, bad their defense was, but they're still able to hang around and hang in games and still compete at a high level. And I think that's just going to carry over onto this season. They set the foundation. They have something they can build off of. Drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, I understand that we all said, it was a little bit of a reach to go ahead and grab him, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense can be a tremendous asset. He could be a tremendous weapon for a guy like Jared Goff. And there's already reports coming out and saying that they're not going to use him just like as like a running back. He might just line up as a receiver on some plays and have David Montgomery line up as their running back. And so, they're trying to switch up their scheme. They're trying to give defenses a different look. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's a guy who's going to have a tremendous season this year for sure. I think him and Jared Goff have a very strong connection. This offense would have, hit the ground running from week 1 if Jameson Williams just decided to stay off Prize Picks in the arena. If that guy was playing from week 1 this season, this offense could just explode from the jump all the way to the very end. But unfortunately, he's going to be out for the first 6 games because of that suspension. But this offense, their ceiling is, the moon, bro. They can go to space with this. They have a lot of weapons they can utilize. Their tight end that they drafted, Sam Laporta, I think he's going to be very solid. I think them moving off from TJ Hawkinson isn't as bad as people, think. Obviously, you don't want to pay a lot of your money to your tight end position. Their defense, they still got some things to work on that end of the ball, but overall, I think this Detroit Lions offense can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the league, and we saw glimpses and flashes of that last year. So I have these guys finishing with a record of 9-8, but I would not be surprised if these guys beat us to the 10-win mark and win this division. And then at number 1, of course, I have my Minnesota Vikings sitting here with a record of 10-7. A regression is incoming for my team. Last year, we went 11-0 in 1-score games. We won 13 games last year. Coming into last season, I was extremely hyped about my team. Not a lot of people believed in my team. I came on here and said that we were going to finish with a record of 13-4. That's exactly what we did. But unfortunately, nothing amounted to it when we got to the playoffs. First round exit. It's a disappointing season, disappointing way to end your season, especially after everything that we went through last season. But It's all good. All of that is in the rear view. All of that is in the past. It's behind me now. It's behind us now. And of course, we'll have a little bit of a regression defensively. I don't think we're going to be as good as we were last year. I don't think we'll be as bad as we were last year, but we'll be a slightly better defensive team because of our defensive coordinator, Brian Flores. Offensively, though, I have no issues. Like, that's the one part of my team that I have like no concerns about. I understand that we have all the weapons in the world now. Drafting Jordan Addison to complement a guy like Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's not going to see double teams, triple teams anymore. So, we have all the weapons for Kirk Cousins to use. He can utilize all of those weapons perfectly. I have no issue with that. We re-signed TJ Hawkinson for the future. I like that move. Moving on from Dalvin Cook, I expected that. Moving on from Thielen, I expected that. But just the defense is the big question mark for my team. I just don't know how good of a defensive team we're going to be. And I know that a regression is incoming, so we're not going to come close to 13 wins. But I think in order for us to win this division, we have to get to 10 wins. 10 wins will be the max amount of wins for any team to win this division. I think we'll get to that mark first. I think our offense is probably the best offense in this division. And if a close second is the Detroit Lions, then you have the Bears, and then you have the Packers. Just like my record prediction is in that order. And so, I'm still looking forward to Minnesota Vikings football, but I'm just not as high as I was last year. When I said they were going to go 13-4, but I still think we'll be able to win the division. We'll have a home playoff game, and then obviously we'll go from there. But that's my record predictions, and I think you can either switch the Bears and the Packers between 3 and 4. But I just personally think the Bears have a better sense of direction and where they want to go with their franchise and what they've built so far and what they've done in free agency in comparison to the Packers. For the Packers, Jordan Love, this era, that they're about to enter, it's going to have some growing pains that they have to, get used to for the beginning. And then, maybe in the future it might pan out. But for me, I just think it's going to be, a lot of growing pains to start off. And then maybe later on in the season, he might end up cooking up a little bit. But that's my NFC North record predictions. It's just the first to 10 wins. That's how I've been viewing it, for the last couple of months, and that's what it is today.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Seeing now late, now that's overkill.